Michael Usher.
Good evening. We begin with exclusive details of the young Sydney man accused of training to be a terrorist to fight in Syria. 21-year-old John Zakhariev is under arrest in Bulgaria, where his family has now flown for a court appearance today. Our reporter Mike Duffy is in the Bulgarian capital, Sofia, where he spoke exclusively with Zakhariev's sister and was in the court. Mike.
Michael, the court heard John Zakhariev was watched and filmed by a special operations unit for weeks prior to his arrest. Proceedings today centred around evidence from the prosecution, and Zakhariev sat there calmly throughout the lengthy proceedings. Now, he won't return to court for weeks now, but at least he has family support. Prosecutors say 21-year-old John Zakhariev is a dangerous terrorist. They say he travelled to Syria but returned to Bulgaria to train with an AK-47 and posed an imminent threat. But in the back of this Bulgarian courtroom last night, support from his big sister Navina, who flew from Sydney to be by his side.
He's my little brother. He's a very special, really kind, considerate boy. The only thing that put him actually where he is was putting his trust in the wrong people.
Speaking exclusively with 7 News, she says she firmly believes in her brother's innocence.
Yeah, absolutely no way I would support any of this. I wouldn't be in Bulgaria right now if I didn't think that John was innocent.
A former Waverley College student, he converted to Islam after leaving school. He joined the Street Dawah Islamic group that was run by ISIS recruiter Mohammed Ali Barialeh. His sister says her brother was an enthusiastic Muslim, but not a terrorist.
I definitely think he put his beliefs in the wrong group of people, and that's all I regret, was that he just fell into the wrong hands.
His lawyer says travelling to Syria was a big mistake.
This visit in Syria brought this case to him.
The case is big news here in Bulgaria because this is one of the first times terrorism charges have made it to the courts. Now his family must wait months, possibly years, for a final verdict. In Sofia, Mike Duffy, 7 News.
News with Mark Ferguson. Good evening. A young Sydney man behind bars in Bulgaria, accused of terror offences, claims he was sold out by his own government. In an exclusive 7 News interview, John Zakhariev has described his 6 months in a Sofia prison as a battle and says he never intended to go to Syria to kill. John Zakhariev isn't quite what you'd expect. He's intense, but relaxed, mature beyond his years, and polite.
Thank you for coming.
But one question is obvious.
Are you a terrorist?
Absolutely not.
Bulgarian prosecutors reckon he is. He was placed under surveillance after a tip-off from Australian authorities.
Absolutely outraged. It seems to me that the AFP and ASIO only specialise in selling Australian citizens off to foreign nations.
Zakhariev crossed into Syria in 2013 after a conversion to Islam that saw him join the controversial Street Dawah group in Sydney. That group was led by ISIS recruiter Mohammed Ali Barialeh. After leaving Syria, he learned to use AK-47s at this firing range.
They haven't provided a shred of evidence.
But his life had seemed destined for other things. A student of private school Waverley College and son of a diplomat. He claims he's been stitched up.
This is a very poorly attempted entrapment operation on the part of the Bulgarian authorities. The sole reason why I'm in prison today is because I went to a couple of shooting ranges in Sofia in Bulgaria, and shooting here is absolutely legal.
Why train with AK-47s?
To clarify, I didn't train. I went shooting one time at the 360 shooting range in the city of Plovdiv, and I shot 15 bullets from an AK. Again, this is completely illegal in Bulgaria. The instructor had to load the magazine and, basically do everything for me. And yet the prosecution alleges that I acquired skills to handle the Kalashnikov.
He's doing it tough in prison.
Every second is a battle to keep it together.
Just weeks ago, his father died here in Bulgaria while supporting him. Back home in Balmain, his mother, who we spoke with a week ago, has stage 4 cancer.
I want to say to my mum that I love you very much, and I'm being strong here for your sake.
His sister, also from Sydney, joined him in court this week. He's turned his back on Islam.
Are you a terrorist? Are you a threat?
No, I'm not a threat.
And what threat would you represent if you return to Australia?
Absolutely none.
Do you hope you'll see Australia again?
Absolutely, I love my country.
He claims he's innocent, but whether the courts ultimately believe that is another thing. The Bulgarian legal system is painfully slow, even slower because this is only the 3rd case of its kind in the country's history.
In Sofia, Bulgaria, Mike Duffy, 7 News.
Covert surveillance video of an Australian charged with terrorism offences in Bulgaria. Exclusively obtained by 7 News, it forms part of the case against 21-year-old Sydney man John Zakhariev, a case the prosecutor says is strong.
This special intelligence video of Sydney man John Zakhariev is part of the evidence in the Bulgarian terrorism case against him. The surveillance operation followed a tip-off from Australia.
The AFP and ASIO only specialise in selling Australian citizens off to foreign nations.
But in an interview with 7 News, prosecutors say warnings also came from the FBI.
In accordance with the information we have, the prosecution thinks yes, he was involved in terrorism. There is enough material gathered that speaks against him.
7 News has learned that material includes this surveillance, phone taps and information removed from his devices. Zakhariev was a Waverley College student who later converted to Islam and joined the controversial Street Dawah group. He crossed into Syria in 2013. More recently, he went to this firing range and learned to fire an AK-47.
Are you a terrorist?
Absolutely not.
The prosecution is convinced he was training himself for military action either here or in another country.
As with many parts of Europe, immigration is a hot topic here in Bulgaria. They're worried about large numbers of immigrants from Syria and Iraq and whether that has implications for national security. His case will recommence this week. Mike Duffy, 7 News.
In the coming hours, a Sydney man could be jailed for 8 years in Eastern Europe accused of being a terrorist. Prosecutors say John Zakhariev travelled to Syria and learned to fire machine guns in Bulgaria. His sick mother has now flown there from Sydney. This is the mother of accused terrorist John Zakhariev, visiting him in Sofia prison. She told 7 News she fears it could be one of the last times she ever sees her son.
I have cancer. I don't know how long I can live.
Zakhariev, a former Sydney schoolboy, is charged with a string of terrorism offences. Tomorrow, a court will decide whether he faces years behind bars.
He's having a really tough time because he's foreign as well. He doesn't speak any Bulgarian.
A former student at Waverley College and son of a diplomat, Zakhariev's life seemed destined for better things. But travelling on this passport, he crossed into Syria in 2013 after a conversion to Islam that saw him join the controversial Street Dawah group in Sydney. After leaving Syria, Zakhariev learned to use AK-47s at this firing range. 7 News interviewed the 21-year-old in March.
Are you a terrorist?
Absolutely not.
But prosecutors told 7 News he is. This video surveillance part of the evidence.
In accordance with the information we have, the prosecution thinks yes, he was involved in terrorism.
John Zakhariev isn't linked to an attack or of taking part in the fighting in Syria. But prosecutors say crossing into the war zone and learning to shoot here in Bulgaria is evidence enough that he planned to join the conflict and terrorist organisations.
His mother has a plea for the judge.
Forgive my son. Give him chance.
The court's decision is expected late tomorrow. In Bulgaria, Mike Duffy, 7 News. A Sydney man is tonight in a foreign jail convicted of planning to take part in terror. After a wealthy upbringing and a private school education, John Zakhariev travelled to Syria and learned to fire a machine gun before red flags were raised.
John, is there anything you can say?
Led away in handcuffs, Sydney man John Zakhariev is a convicted terrorist.
John, is there anything you can say about this?
It was to be expected. Nothing more could be expected from a show trial.
Educated at an eastern suburbs private school, now headed for an Eastern European jail for 4 years.
What would you like to say to the people of Australia?
I would like to say that I'm 100% innocent from the charges.
Zakhariev is the son of a diplomat. He later converted to Islam. In 2013, he travelled to Syria for 8 days, was questioned by ASIO when he returned home before flying to Bulgaria, where he learned to use an AK-47 at this firing range. His mother Anne has terminal cancer, but left her treatment behind to be in court for her son. She now may never see him again.
I have to be strong because I still hope that one day, should my son get out from jail, we can spend together.
She believes he's been wrongly convicted.
Nor have they provided any evidence to show any links or sympathies with ISIS or Daesh.
Zakhariev maintained his innocence throughout proceedings, But in the end, the judge decided he was planning to take part in an act associated with terrorism. The court decided his weapons training proved his intent. Under Bulgarian law, he's likely to serve the full 4-year term, knowing his mother has a life or death battle back home. In Sofia, Bulgaria, Mike Duffy, 7 News.